Hello, you're listening to Recalibrate and Go, a podcast brought to you by Aptude. I'm your host, Michael Foster. Hey, everybody. You know, there's an old saying, Jack of all trades, master of none. But I don't know. I think this Jack that we're talking to, Jack Recinto, he spent a couple years at Vetter Price, but he's been in the IT business for 2 decades now. I think he's a master of a lot of trades, a lot of things. Very knowledgeable. Today we're talking to him about what's on everybody's mind. We're all working from home. We're all trying this telework. So many different terms. You can choose the one you like best. But obviously we're all making a lot of changes to our everyday working habits. And Jack, he knows a lot about this. He knows a lot about IT management. He's one of the smartest guys in the field, and we got him today talking to us. We hope you enjoy. And by the way, as I think we stated earlier, the sound quality might be a little rough, and that's because, well, we're doing this from home. But like I've said before, the sound quality might be just okay, could be good, could be better, but the information is great. And you're going to want to stick around for this. Jack Recinto, here on Recalibrate and Go. Hello, my name is Michael Foster, and you're with us at Recalibrate and Go, brought to you by Aptude. It's our podcast. During changing times, during crazy times, we like to give you information that you need to stay one step ahead of the curve. And with us today, we have Jack Recinto, and we couldn't be more thrilled. Jack is the senior applications developer at Vetter Price. He's been in the business for a couple decades, and he's one of the smartest guys around. IT management, application development, he knows his way around any system. And like I said, we couldn't be happier. Jack, thank you so much.
Michael, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
You know, it's funny because we were just saying, we've talked about this. It feels like it was 2013 when we first talked about doing this podcast together. It was only 2 months ago, but
yeah, lots changed in that time, huh?
Yeah, right. We're in a whole new planet. Literally, it seems like it's even vibrating less. That's the news story right now, and it's funny because I know, like in the beginning, and we've said this, like tech podcasts, no matter what, they tend to get outdated within 6 months because technology moves so fast.
That's right.
Moore's law doesn't. It's. I don't know if it's slowing down or not. It keeps going, but especially now, you can't avoid what's on everyone's minds. COVID-19, coronavirus. I mean, it's impacted everybody. And so, you know, Jack and I have been talking about doing this for a while, and then he said, you know what? I think it's time. We should cover something about COVID-19. And so this podcast today is going to be about how do you evolve your technology during this time period. And we know that what we say may or may not be applicable a few months from now, but what we're going to do is, and hopefully we'll have Jack back if you want to come back on the show, this turns out well, and we'll go over like what happened and what didn't happen, because this isn't the first time. And you can just see, I'm just sighing, you know, like we've experienced this. I mean, you were around for the .com crash in 9/11.
Exactly.
I imagine you were working professionally then.
I was, yep.
Yeah, and I had just started my career in 2000, and then of course the Great Recession, and so it seems like every 10 years, like we just get punched in the face.
Yep.
You know, I remember the comedian Nick Swartzen years ago said that our generation was going to be like the really mean curmudgeons in the nursing home. Assuming we have those, we may not have them in the future the way this is going, but you know, we're going to be like the really angry generation. Like, man, those guys are just mean. What happened? I think we're that way now, actually. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
We are locked in between boomers and between millennials, and there's that war going on between them. So being in the middle of that, it can make you a little bit, I guess, curmudgeon-y, if you will.
You know what's funny too is I was at a marketing conference last year, and they had a couple people talking about like generations, and they were talking about the difference between, you know, boomers, millennials, didn't even know what Gen X was, and I just went, oh gosh, because there's only like 10 of us apparently. We were like the smallest generation per capita in American history. The boomers and the millennials are one of the largest by percentage. Yeah. The rumor is that we don't even get Gen X won't even get the voting majority until we're 70.
Wow. Oh,
I've heard that. I know, right? And so it's like, oh, you wonder why we always have a chip on our shoulder. I think all that grunge music and East Coast, West Coast rap, like I really, really forged us into what we need to be. People who are understanding, why are this generation so angry? I don't think we were angry enough, and I think we're about 20 years too early. But Gen Z looks like they're going to pick up the slack a little bit. And I getting back to what I was saying about generations, it seemed like Gen X and you used to be, remember, it was Gen X, Gen Y, and then there was the boomers and silent, and they were all kind of different pockets within the generation. Now they just kind of grouped all of us together into big swaths.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I don't know if that's good or not, but anyway, also too, why you talk about this is because if you're listening, you're getting the perspective of two Gen Xers. So we got this. We know what's going on. All right, let us lead the way.
There we go.
So right off the bat, how's your life changed in the last couple of weeks? Let's just get into the personal.
One of the major changes that have taken place is, as everyone, we have this shelter-in-place order here in Illinois. And of course, that means everybody works from home if you can work from home. And in my particular case, I do work from home, but I also have a pretty young family. I've got a 9-year-old daughter and I've got a 13-year-old son. And of course, school is officially closed in session. However, class still goes on. Their teachers meet with them online occasionally, and they still send 7 hours of work every day to us to help them out with. So
right.
My life has changed to being a full-time husband, a full-time father, a full-time employee, a full-time teacher, you name it. And so trying to find the time to get all this stuff done, I feel like, and this is probably how a lot of people feel, I feel like we're all on this teetering point of riding a unicycle while juggling and hoping you don't drop something and fall off the unicycle in the middle of it all. And technology-based is wonderful because we have these opportunities to work remotely and keep our jobs in that sense. And we have the opportunities of keeping our kids schooled and everything. But at the same time, you see how it also tugs us in all these different directions and everything. So I think this is a really relevant problem that a lot of people are having, and I really have to applaud everyone who's actually doing it. And I want you to know that it is really, really hard, and you're not going to be great at it, but don't hate yourself for it because you will get through it. You know, it's just a matter of kind of prioritizing and saying, this needs to get done. This maybe we can slack off a little bit on, and this, we have to really focus on. So that's pretty much how things are for me right now.
And you know what's funny? I kind of remember there might have been a brief glimpse, and I think we all experienced this right when we kind of realized we're all going to be working from home. Was that, man, I'll be working from home. I'm going to have so much more free time. And I don't even have kids. My wife and I have 2 dogs, and we talked about we've been together for 20 years, and every now and then you go, would we ever regret not having kids? And then like in another apocalypse occurs, like, oh, forget it, we really lucked out.
Yep, exactly.
It's so, first of all, I commend everybody because it's not easy at all. And I think that's right off the bat. It's interesting because when we have these conversations about technology, the first thing that always comes up is the practical day-to-day. We have all this technology, we have all these time-saving devices, but yet we seem to have less time on our hands. Yep. So it's very important because I think, and I know as a marketing ad guy, which is what I do, is it's always about managing expectations. But I think because our bosses and the VPs of the world are in the same boat we are, I think people caught on to it really quick. Actually.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There wasn't that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there might be some companies where it's like, geez, get back, give me some extra time here. I don't know, but I feel very fortunate that I have laptop, will travel, work from home. and because, it's sad. It's so heartbreaking to hear. I know right now it's April 3rd. Is the day we're recording this. So by the time you guys hear it, we have a lot of people who aren't paying rent. People who haven't worked for 2-3 weeks. Yep. So it's heartbreaking, but
it is.
But more on that, that's probably another topic for, I'd say, in the next few weeks, because we're going to really see what the impact is of that. But talking about getting back into evolving your technology, because this is a topic we wanted to cover, and your initial thought, what were you thinking? Because you said we should cover this. What's the big problem right now?
Well, one of the big problems is how are people going to be able to conduct their day-to-day business in this new environment that we're in? You know, the big question that everyone has on their mind is, I have to have access to all these different systems. I have to be able to access this. I have to be able to print. I have to do all these things. And in the office, you take that for granted because basically your IT staff should have everything all put into your PC, whether it be a laptop or a desktop, and you should be able to access everything you need without any kind of problem. But they never intended for the majority of the staff to ever have to go home and have to be able to connect to their personal printers or have to be able to connect to the network from the outside and stuff like that. Particularly in my business as a law firm, secretaries usually don't go home and do work. You know, we expect the attorneys that will do that occasionally, but secretaries and support staff very rarely would ever be home working on things like that. So one of the major things that you want to make sure are in place is some sort of remote connection in. Of course, the top connection that you'd want to get is a VPN or a virtual private network. What that allows you to do is set your computer up so that it has a connection directly into your network, so it's just like being at the office. Probably the second best thing would be having like a Citrix desktop, which is kind of like a remote desktop. So you're not exactly in your computer having that access to everything else, but you have kind of a web-based computer that you interface with that has the connections that you have. And there are pros and cons to both. I would definitely recommend a VPN though, if the business can't afford it and it makes most sense for them.
Right. And I was wondering too, because is the problem not only just a security issue, the VPN issue, just the practicality of having everybody working in different offices and keeping everything tight and secure? Or is it even just like the fact that more of a, like I said, the old analog problems? I know for a lot of people who are in law firms or accounting, they can't legally move the boxes of paperwork out of the office or even just ink for your printer because you still have to print things out. I mean, is it both? In a sense, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, part of it is both in a lot of ways. I mean, with regards to a VPN, when we look at things nowadays, all these companies you have to look at as kind of like independent organizations, okay? And their networks are all kept behind a firewall, which is kind of like, if you want to look at everything in a biological sense, all of these companies are individual cells. And the firewall is the outside cell membrane that stops foreign substances and foreign viruses and things like that from easily getting into those cells. The only way to actually get through that firewall without brutally hacking it or exploiting some sort of security issue is to have a VPN, which is kind of like a tunnel directly into the system. So that's kind of the least intrusive way for an employee to actually access the outside because they're basically working just like they have their computer in the office. So it's identical in all senses once they go in through the VPN. So they can access all their applications, all their shared drives, all the printers there, which won't really help them in this particular case, but that's the point. And as you said, a lot of industries are different. If we're talking about finance industries and law firms and things like that, there are a lot of legal constraints on what you can have paper copies of out of the office and what you can't. And so in those particular cases, that does add a little more. And we try to do a lot of more electronic-based documenting. So we use electronic signatures now. That was something that just got put on really quick and implemented so that people don't have to print out documents. They can work on them directly, sign them, and send them off without ever having to print them and things like that. So it's things like this that we're trying to keep in mind. You know, it's kind of like being agile enough to understand what the business needs and then figuring out what technology is out there to make sure that the business can perform what they need to do.
Time for a break. So right now, the IT department is completely freaking out. You want to hire some new peeps, but these are crazy times and the world's going nuts. So what do? You call Aptude. With offices locally and in Mexico City, we offer on-site and nearshore agile teams to help you materialize your development and support your initiatives. We provide on-site nearshore staff for the initial build and can follow up with a nearshore team for the run. With expertise in full stack, mobility, data science, AI, and data analytics, your projects will get done faster while containing costs. Let's show you how. We're Aptude, keeping you ahead of the curve. It's funny because like our company, we kind of caught on early, and this is like just a personal story. My wife and I had talked about going to Japan this year. We were really looking forward to it, and we were going to go after the Olympics in November. And so we, around like December, January, we were just doing a lot of our research, watching YouTube videos. And of course, that's when coronavirus was tearing its way through China.
Yeah.
And then Tokyo, because they were going to have the Olympics, jumped on it right away. And so we're watching all this footage, and we kind of caught on really early that this was going to be terrible. Because you could see, by the way, like a lot of those, the YouTubers in Japan were like, oh my God, like no one's here. This is right. Like, everyone was freaking out. We kind of had the jump on it. So and luckily with Aptude, like we were able to, I talked to my bosses, like, I think this is going to get bad. And we kind of transitioned earlier, just a little earlier than I think everyone else, and it was a near perfect transition, which, you can't even say that anymore without doing that in Trump voice. It was perfect. It was a near perfect transition, and then half the country believes you or doesn't believe you. I don't know, but it's so, and we were very light and agile. All the necessary files and everything that we needed to do, was already, because actually we had just moved our office, so a lot of stuff was already in boxes and ready to get moved. So we got lucky, right? Where do you think? Most companies suffered. Where were they the most ill prepared? What areas for what we've just gone through?
Well, I think that probably most companies suffered from the fact that they probably had ways of remote access, but they never anticipated having entire remote access. And in cases like that, you probably had companies that were scrambling to either buy new hardware to support that access, or even shutting down maybe like test systems or development systems, or maybe systems that are not business critical, and just saying, we're going to take down these servers so that we have the bandwidth to allow all these people to get into our network without overwhelming our network. I mean, to put it into context, one of the things about COVID-19 that they're saying that they're worried about, which is why they have the shelter-in-place rule in effect, is just the fact that if so many people get infected and so many people go to the hospital, they're going to overwhelm the medical system, because the hospitals won't have enough beds to take all these people in. It's kind of the same thing. If you don't have the network infrastructure in place to support so many external connections coming in and accessing all of that, then it overwhelms the system and it causes slownesses and outages and all sorts of crazy things. So I think that was where some of the ill preparedness actually was, is just the fact that they didn't have the infrastructure in place to really allow everyone in at the same time.
So of course, and this would be a good kind of way to look at it, like past, present, and future. So obviously, and when I say past, that was like 2-3 weeks ago. It changes so fast.
It does.
Well, I remember even when we were talking, like, because we send out emails to our clients and our friends and things. And I had written the St. Patrick's Day email like on March 11th. And then I realized by March 16th, I had to completely rewrite the email, because by then the official stay-at-home was in place. So we kind of like these jokes like, oh, we'll have a drink sometime. Then it became, we'll go out for a drink sometime one day when we can actually do that again. It's
exactly.
Within just a few days, we found that we were literally, altering our content on the fly. So we're now like a few weeks into this. The next question being the present is, what can companies do now? Where are we at, and what can they do to help make the situation better?
Well, at this particular point, I think we're beginning to settle in and companies are beginning to see where they are and things like that. I think they have to take this approach of understanding that this is the new norm for we don't know how long. And in that particular way, they have to start looking at where we are now. I think a good way to kind of gauge the barometer at your company is to send out a survey to all your employees and just say, look, you've been working from home for about 2 weeks now. What are the challenges you have both personally and professionally? And in those particular ways, kind of say, look, we're trying to help everybody out. We understand that we all have to be productive and stuff like that. We understand you're going to have some challenges because we know your kids are at home with you. And so we want to make sure that that's all covered. And by getting that information from your employees, you can then start to strategically look at maybe changing how your business process works. I mean, since we're all home, it may not be necessary for people to have 9-to-5 schedules anymore. It may make more sense to stagger your employees a bit so that the employees with kids can maybe help out at school and get that stuff done so that they can then have their 8 hours of devoted work to you without having to worry about helping them answer science questions or helping them do Common Core math problems or what have you at that particular point. The other thing is it also identifies flaws in maybe the business processes. Maybe there's certain times where your system's slower because everyone's on and everyone's running reports at the same time and things like that. Getting a parameter for that can kind of help you strategize how to effectively move forward with business over the next few weeks. If you don't have a good finger on that pulse, then you're kind of just going to be triaging things as they come in, and you're going to see that water pop out of the dam, in one hole, and stick your finger in that one and stick your toe in that one, and before you know it, you're all stretched out and you're not really solving the problem that's actually there. By sending out that survey, now that people have had 2 weeks at home, you get that idea of what they find challenging from a business and a personal level, and how you can actually build a strategy to resolve those issues as best as a company possibly can.
Hey, all of my apt pupils out there. You've been listening to Recalibrate and Go, the podcast brought to you by Aptude. We've been talking with Jack Recinto. He's an IT manager. He's an applications developer. He's been in the business for 20 years. There's going to be a second part to this conversation. You don't want to miss it. We're going to go even further down the rabbit hole to see exactly what companies can do, what you can do to make this situation better. And also, we're going to talk about the future. We covered the past and present, but how does the world change? It's a really difficult thing to predict because, quite honestly, one can never truly grasp something like this where there's so many moving parts, where there's so many dynamics. But we're going to take a stab at it anyway. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast, and we have a very robust blog on our website at aptude.com. Make sure you check us out weekly, monthly, daily, hourly. Sign up for a newsletter. Sign up for correspondence. Give us a call. Say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening to Recalibrate and Go. I'm Michael Foster, and we will be back soon.